Hey everybody, this is Jim at SP500chart.com. It's a few minutes before 5 o'clock on October 15th, 2014. We're going to take a look at this wild and woolly ride that we had in the markets today, see kind of where it might fit in with the chart. Before we do, I just need to remind you that the website and this video are for educational purposes only. Nothing stated at the site or in the video is intended to be used as investment advice. I can draw lines on charts, but you have to draw your own conclusions from your own research and make investment decisions that are suitable for your personal financial situation. I am not a licensed financial professional, never have been. I'm just a guy who draws lines on charts. So let's take a look. Starting out, let me adjust the chart. Thought I had that set up just right. It is not. Now it is. Starting out looking on a daily chart. Here we are at our low, right about here on this chart. In the 1820s, I believe, we actually hit. We got down to almost 1820. And interesting to note, we had a strong bounce at that level. 1820 still does not satisfy. If this acts as a double top, let's zoom in on that just a little bit. If indeed we are looking at a double top right here, 1820 still does not satisfy the minimum target from that double top. I'm going to revise that target, and I'm just going to call it 1800 because it depends upon where you draw this line. If you go with the absolute peak up here and you go with the time that we broke down, you end up with a little bit, maybe a hair under 1800. If you were to go with the midpoint of the pattern, which some people might think that's what you should do, then we did satisfy that requirement. I'm not quite willing to say that that is the right thing to do, however, but it is sufficient to say we at least are fairly close to this double top meeting its minimum downside target. And without question, our consolidation pattern between these two green lines has exceeded the target level, because that target level was 1868. We got significantly underneath that. Now here's what is interesting, and I don't want to say this too strongly because I don't want to lead anybody astray, but as I was watching the markets this morning, I was seeing every single downtrend support line on this chart get taken out to the downside. Okay, let's take a quick look at them to make sure we're all on the same page. First off, we had this line right here. Clearly, it was taken out at the open and again at the low of the day in the early afternoon. All right. This line right here that I don't think is as important as that first red line I pointed out, taken out at the open and again later in the afternoon. This line, look folks, this line was already going virtually straight down for all practical purposes, taken out at the open and later in the afternoon. Now what's going on with that? Well, first thing is this. If you've been at SP500chart.com for very long, you'll know one of the things we talk about is the tendency of trend lines to flip when they've been violated, support lines tend to turn into resistance, or resistance lines tend to turn into support. But we're always quick to say that descending support lines, when they are taken out to the downside, you cannot count on them to turn into resistance. And we saw that twice today. This line got taken out. It was no problem for the S&P to get back over it. It was taken out then by a clearly technically significant margin of close to 2%. And what happened? Came right back up through it. Another thing that we talk about from time to time is the tendency for when you see descending support lines get taken out like that, it is often the result of uncontrolled and call it panic, if you will. So we get this, apparently the Ebola news, people are freaking out about it, and understandably it's serious. But this to me almost looks like a short-term capitulation. I'm not quite ready to call this a bottom. But the fact is, we closed yesterday after having traded over this little support line, resistance line, but not by a technically significant margin. We had this awful day today. At one point we were down 50 points, right at about. Regained more than 2/3 of that. And we closed the day over this resistance line once again, not by a technically significant margin. So I think despite the panic that we saw, I'm kind of looking at this as potentially a sign that a short-term bottom was either put in today or is very close to being put in today. If you want to get cute and maybe throw up an additional line to help us out, maybe right here, maybe we end up with another little inverted head and shoulders pattern at this bottom, if it ends up being a bottom. In other words, maybe tomorrow we start out with weakness and then we rally and we take this out, and then we find out that we are in fact on our way back up over 1900. Now, one thing to keep in mind, every line, with the exception of this one right here, but every line that is above us should now be considered to one degree or another resistance. So I think we've got to watch this carefully. If we get that rally back up into the 1900s, I would watch it closely for signs of weakness when we get into these areas right here, and hopefully, if indeed that is where we're headed next, hopefully we'll see enough in the chart to give us some indication of when things might break down. So just as we've been looking at this descending line right here as an indication as when this selling might be over, the converse would be true if we see that rally up once again over 1900. So guys, wow, what a funky day. I knew it was going to be ugly. Strangely enough, because I'm in this weird, strange mixed bag of individual stocks, I was up big for the day. Go figure. But that was just luck. I think I wouldn't call that skill. It just so happened to work out that way. So guys, there you have it. I think we still watch this descending channel. We're looking for a technically significant move over this channel. And I am reading these two dips right here, personally, as at least some indication that longs were at least in the short term panicking and throwing in the towel. And typically when you see that kind of a violation of a descending support line, or when you see an ascending support line get taken out to the upside, oftentimes that marks a top. So I think this could be a bottom. Not enough information quite yet to call it one, but so far that is the general sense that I feel about this chart, based upon the fact that we traded underneath twice during the day. We traded underneath every single descending support line that we have on this chart. That's not the kind of trading that takes place in a controlled environment where people are thinking rationally. That is the kind of selling that takes place when people are freaking out. So, what do they say? Well, when people freak out, you should be a buyer. With that in mind, I bought a couple things. I actually bought one thing yesterday, and did a little bit more today. So, guys, let's see how this works out going forward. Let's see if that if getting underneath those descending support lines as we did today, see if maybe that weeded out some weak hands out of this market, sufficient to give us a foundation for now seeing at least a short-term rally. Thanks for watching. Take care.